That's not the complexion of any urine I've ever become familiar with. So I worked in exotic car sales from 2009 to 2015, and you kind of learn a lot about the dealership business and how you sell cars and how you keep cars in inventory, and a lot of it is sort of as you might imagine, but there's a lot of things that you would not expect that you encounter literally every day. And one of the things that we ran into was really an endless struggle was how you keep 50 to 60 cars in inventory ready for sale, because these people show up, they want to see their cars, and they don't want them to be filthy or needing service or having any lights on. And so the process of keeping that number of cars sort of up and in good shape and ready to go was an unending struggle, particularly cleaning them, because we would keep $10-15 million worth of cars in inventory at any moment, and inevitably, just due to space constraints, about half of them would have to be outside. So we're talking about a lot of really valuable cars outside, sort of in the open, and you could walk onto our lot at night, and there were security cameras and things, but sometimes it was really hard for us to catch them. At one point, in fact, we had a string of people coming around to different dealerships in the metro Atlanta area stealing wheels off cars. And they would come in and they would look at the cameras, and they were all in masks and everything, and they had these mats that they would slide under the cars and use an air compressor to just lift the cars up with these mats, and they could have a whole set of wheels off a car in less than a minute. I mean, it was pit stop efficiency. And they came in, they took 4 or 5 sets of wheels, and fortunately we ended up finding our wheels that were stolen off 2 brand new Aston Martin DBSs for sale on eBay about a week later, and we bought them and then just disputed the charge with Amex, and we got them back and ended up getting the guys arrested down in Florida where they had taken the wheels. But this was not the only things that would happen. Just every day it would seem like some strange circumstance would pop up, and keeping the cars detailed was an unending struggle. Particularly one summer, we started to notice that the fronts of the cars were dirty each morning. And it wasn't the same cars, and it wasn't the same part of the lot, but each morning we'd have 3 or 4 different cars with this gooey, yellowy orange tree sap junk on the hoods. And it was always concentrated generally around the hood emblems. And it would come off without too much trouble, but the detailers were starting to get annoyed with it, and we were annoyed that every morning we had to come in and see which cars were dirty and get them all washed back up so they would at least be presentable and out on the front line. So we were doing everything we could to figure out what was happening. We talked to some arborists about what trees could be causing this, because it was kind of a new issue for us, and that was relatively surprising because there wasn't anything new to the landscaping and no strange new weather phenomenon that might have been happening. And so one morning, one of the detailers that was cleaning the cars came in. He said, "Ed, I think the stuff on the front of these cars is urine." I said, "Urine?" I said, "That's not the complexion of any urine I've ever become familiar with, but if you say so, let's look into the security footage or something like that and see what we could find." And so we started flipping through and couldn't find anything. We were kind of trying to envision what part of the night they might be coming in, or in the morning right before we'd open, whatever the case may be. And so we eventually see this guy right before we'd open. He'd wander across in this trench coat, and he would stand for a few seconds in front of a car and then move to the next one. And in fact, he was relieving himself and then moving on to the next. Impressive prostate bladder control, but whatever was coming out of him was not normal human urine, but it was at least in that family of bodily fluids. We called the police and said, "Have you ever heard of this happening?" And no, but they were good friends of the dealership. We would loan them cars for parades and things like that, and so they were all happy to help in any way they can. And they were also located exactly across the street from where we were. So they said, keep an eye out, and if you see this guy walk around, because we would occasionally see him in the lot, but we didn't have time, or we were tied up doing something, he would kind of come on and then run away. And they said, "Well, see if you see him, and then we'll come and we'll handle the problem." So we were going through our day a few days later, and we saw him, and he kind of came across the lot really quickly, but by the time we called them, he had already gone. So they looked around and did what they could, but they didn't find him. So we cleaned those cars off and we're ready for the next day. And so we were all on kind of high alert to see this, and so we called because we saw him. He'd walked on the lot and he wasn't moving too fast, and in fact, I think the general manager was walking around on the phone, and he comes across, he goes, Ed, he's here, call the cops. And so I did, and they picked up the phone and said, "Do you have the Urine Bandit?" Which they had come to call him. I said, "In fact, we do. Come on." And so they brought the entire police force across. They had a bunch of their Tahoes and patrol vehicles, all lights and sirens ablaze, and the ones that weren't in the car were on foot with guns drawn. And it didn't take long for this guy to figure out that he was in some trouble. So he started to run, but they weren't having that. So they all pursued him on foot and in cars, and they chased him down behind the neighboring sort of pizza, laundromat, restaurant, shopping center that was next to the dealership. And I guess they chased him and got him to the ground and motivated him never to do that again. But they were thrilled to have caught their urine bandit, and we were very pleased to not have to undergo the same cleaning protocol each morning when we got in.